said in those videos that this was going to be interactive, so we are living to our promises, because we want you guys to process this information and we want to make it fun as much as possible. So we have some poll questions for you. Andrea, they will come up live.
Yes.
Yes. So the first one says an individual that works full-time can be considered underemployed. Is that true or false? You can submit your answer to the poll question. Okay. Yes, it is correct. It is true. Remember that even though someone might be working full-time, if they still consider low income based on our regulations and the chart poverty level line, then they will be underemployed. That is correct. Good job. Let's move to the next one. And yes, you guys got it right again. Remember, we just added policy to clarify, added language to our policy to clarify that even though an individual is incarcerated, that individual will be considered unemployed under our regulations and can receive services pre-release while that person is incarcerated and post-release. Let's move to the next one. This is scenario. So Paul is 42 and just learned through the local newspaper that his company is closing in 2 weeks. He comes to your center asking for help in finding a new job. Is Paul eligible for Title I services? A, no, Paul is not eligible because the layoff notification is not official. You need to ask Paul to come back once he receives a letter from his employer. B, yes, Paul is eligible to receive Title I services under the Dislocated Worker Program. A PDF printout of the newspaper will satisfy for WIOA data validation. Or C, yes, Paul could be eligible for Title I adult services, but you need to establish financial eligibility first as he was working for the past 6 months. Okay. So we had a mixture of answers here. So, and that's good. Yes, most of you answered B. Yes, Paul is eligible to receive Title I services under the Dislocated Worker Program. And the notification from the newspaper is enough. You print that out, upload it, and that should be enough for you to start providing Paul services if he meets the other basic eligibility requirements. So hopefully that brought some clarification to some of you. Okay, next question. Priority of service is a requirement as part of the eligibility determination process. True, A, B, false. And priority of service, it is not part of the eligibility determination process. Remember, they have to be first eligible. We have to first answer that question, whether the person is eligible or not for the adult program. And then we move on to determining priority of service. You can't determine priority of service without making that eligibility determination first. And priority of service does not bypass eligibility determination. So that's important for us to remember. And we're gonna move to our next scenario. So Gabe is 26 and working full-time at the local gas station. His current job earnings are significantly less than his previous job. Gabe is in need of a high school diploma. He comes to your one-stop asking for training services. When you review his paperwork, you determine that he meets the basic adult eligibility requirement. Is Gabe eligible for Title I services? A, no, because he's working full-time and he's probably not low income. B, yes, because he is basic skills deficient. C, yes, because he is considered underemployed. Let's see if Gabe makes it to our program or not. Okay, let's see the results. Interesting. So most of you said yes because he is basic skills deficient. But the question here is Gabe eligible for Title I services? What makes him eligible for Title I services? Remember, basic skills deficient has to do with priority of service. It's not relevant to determine that Gabe's eligibility to the adult program, not yet. Priority of service is step 2. Determining eligibility is step 1. So here the scenario says that Gabe he's working full time, right? But his current job earnings are significantly less than his previous job. That makes him underemployed. And the question is he eligible? Well, he meets the rest of the basic adult eligibility requirements. And now we need to look whether he meets the other one of the other two, underemployed or unemployed. And because he's making less money than what he was doing in his previous job, he is considered underemployed. Therefore, those of you that answer C, you are correct. He is eligible because he is considered underemployed.
Rosani, have a question from Aviana Jackson. Said, did OWD remove the 80% for, I think it's saying 80% for underemployed?
Unemployed or underemployed? Yes, I see your question, Aviana.
Oh, hey, Rosani, how are you?
Doing good. How are you?
Good. I thought previously it was saying they had to have 80% of their earnings from a previous job. And I was trying to clarify, was that removed?
Well, we're using the most recent definition that we have in policy. I know, Brittany, you are on the training, so I'm going to defer to you.
Sure, I have the policy pulled up here just so I'm not quoting the wrong thing, but the 80% that you're talking about, Aviana, is for dislocated worker underemployment, not adult underemployment. I think that's maybe where the confusion is coming from. For dislocated workers, they would be considered underemployed if they are earning wages that are 85% or less of the salary they were paid at their employer of dislocation, but it's not the same definition for adult underemployment.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
That was an excellent question, and it was important for us to get it clarified. Thank you, Brittany. Okay, I think we have a few more questions and we're gonna be done. So our next poll question is: veteran loses their priority status to individuals who are part of the statutory priority group or groups. Is that true or false? Let's see the results. Yes, 95% of you answer false, and it is false. Veterans will always have priority over veterans that are part of the 3 priority groups. They will go first, right? Those veterans that are not part of the priority group goes 1, 2 on the third, on number 3, right? So they won't lose priority status. The veterans won't lose priority status. They just have to be, part of the priority group to go first, but they still have priority. Let's move to our last poll question, and we're almost done. We have one more poll question and one more scenario. Basic skills deficiency needs to be assessed through a tape test. Is this true or false? Oh, interesting. 35% of you said yes, it is true. 65 of you said no, it is false. And the correct answer is that it is false. You have options to assess basic skills deficiency. And there's a week that we issued over a year and a half ago that tells you that in order for you to assess basic skills deficiency, you can utilize different assessments. The process that you have to follow is you select your assessment, you submit that assessment to our office for our approval. We will review that assessment within a certain number of days and tell you whether we approve the assessment or talk further with you. And then once you have that assessment approved, you can utilize it. You have options. You don't have to use tape. Tape 11 and 12 is very different from tape 9 and 10. So it is more comprehensive, it is more intense for the participant and for those that administer the tape test. So you do have options. Just know that you don't have to use tape to assess for basic skills deficiency.
Rosani, question from Christy Freeman. If an adult lacks a high school diploma or GED, bypassing any type of achievement is okay, right? Since the lack would mean basic skills deficient.
So if the adult doesn't have the high school diploma or the GED, that person will be considered basic skills deficient. That's when you use a screening tool that like the one that we provided you. And if they self-attest that they don't have that high school diploma or the GED, or they're not enrolled in a secondary program, then they will be considered basic skills deficient. That's correct. Okay, and we are down to our last scenario for the day. So Lisa is a veteran that retired from the Air Force 2 years ago. She provides you with her DD-214 and let you know she is struggling finding steady employment since her transition back into civilian life. She explains to you that she is surviving financially with her GI Bill and disability benefits. She is asking for employment and training services. Is Lisa eligible for Title I services? Let's figure that out. Answer A. Yes, she is eligible for the Dislocated Worker Program. B. No, she cannot receive training services. She needs to utilize her GI Bill benefits before Title I can provide funding for training services. C. Yes, she qualifies for Title I Adult Employment and Training Services. Which one is the correct answer? Let's figure that out. So 38% of you answered that she qualifies for the Dislocated Worker Program. 9% no, she cannot receive training services because she needs to utilize her GI Bill benefits first. And 53% of you answered yes, she qualifies for the Adult Employment and Training Services Title I Adult for the Title I Adult Program. And the correct answer for those of you that answer C is C. I know this can be confusing, and that's why we have this scenario. Lisa is not transitioning out of the military service. Therefore, she won't qualify for the dislocated worker. Veterans qualify for the adult program. And it is important to remember that the GI Bill benefits is a benefit that the military service members they have, but they don't have to utilize it. We don't consider that the financial aid that as Pell, for example, they can use it if they choose to, but we can't ask them that or require for them to utilize their GI Bill benefits before we can provide training services. If they have their GI Bill benefits or not, we don't really consider that. I know that policy was confusing. We made some changes last year to make sure that the language that says GI Bill was removed from the policy, so you know that we are not counting on the GI Bill. But for this example, always remember that we serve veterans through our adult program, not dislocated worker programs. Those that are transitioning out of the military, then those are the ones that will be considered for the dislocated worker program.
Question. Well, there was a question. What's the definition of transitioning?
Excellent question. So a transitioning service member is a military member that is still active, but has put in their request for transitioning out of the military, and they have 18 months. They can do this within an 18-month period, and they have to show you the proof that they requested that. And there's several documents that they can give you. They won't have the DD-214 just yet, but they will have other official notifications saying that they're transitioning out of the military. We are adding to this training, the resources of this training. We're adding our week for data validation for individuals with barriers. And in that week, you have in one of the attachments is a checklist that will give you the documentation that you need. Also, this explanation that I gave you about veterans considered for adult program versus transitioning military members considered for dislocated, all of that is part of the attachments on that week.
Okay, we had a couple more questions. From Vicki Thompson, would you still have to consider her disability, and is it military, and maybe the salary of a spouse?
So if someone is, one of their barrier is that they are disabled, by definition, right, an individual who is disabled is considered family of one. Therefore, we don't consider the spouse salary, right? And we don't consider the military, the disability benefits that they receive through the military. So those won't count toward income.
All right, and another question from Charmaine Glenn. Would usage of WIOA funds be primary and her GI Bill be secondary?
Can you read that again, Robin? I'm sorry.
Yes. Would usage of WIOA funds be primary and her GI Bill be secondary?
So that's a very good question, Charmaine. We won't really consider the GI Bill funds at all. For our calculations, we will go without really considering it because it's not one of the requirements. It's not one of our financial aid requirements like Pell. It's considered differently. They really don't have to utilize it at all.
Looks like
If they chose to, sorry, this is the only thing I was going to add is really the important thing is that it's up to the service member to decide what they do with those GI benefits. So, you know, if WIOA covered a portion or if their GI Bill, they wanted to use that to cover a portion and we're picking up the rest, that's their choice. All we're saying is we're not going to require the use of GI benefits.
Thank you, Brittany. Yes, and it's different from what we have done in the past, right? But the TIGO clearly explained that it's up to that military person.
and Brittany responded in the chat. I'll read it about the transitioning service members. Says 18 months prior to retirement or 12 months before separation, i.e. other than dishonorable. Okay. And Ada Jones has a question.
Hey, Rosani.
Yes, hi, Ada.
Just a quick question. Let me make sure I understood this correctly. So if you have a veteran that is just got laid off through no fault of his own, and he is unlikely to return, he would not be a dislocated worker?
So if you have a transitioning service member, right? That is
Wouldn't be
transitioning.
transitioning. He would just be, this guy got out of the, this lady, whoever got out of the military a while ago. He's still considered a veteran. Nothing, maybe 4 years ago, he went to work. He got, lost his job through no fault of his own. He's unlikely to return. Would he be considered a dislocated worker, or
Yes. He will be considered a dislocated worker because he meets one of the 7 categories for the dislocation, right? So he's 18 or older, registered for selected services, authorized to work, and has, in addition to be a veteran, right, fulfills one of the 7 categories for dislocated workers. So in that instance, he might not fall within the category of transitioning military service member, but he will fall into the other categories and unlikely to return. Therefore, you can serve that individual as a dislocated worker. Make
Okay,
sense?
thank you. Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And Rosani, Christy Freeman is asking if you can walk through Lisa's case showing how she falls under adult the category again.
Okay, so Lisa transitioned out of the military, right? She's been out for 2 years. She has her DD 214, and she comes to the center because after 2 years she's still struggling finding employment and she wants services. So in this case, we are assuming that Lisa doesn't meet any of the 7 categories that makes you dislocated. She's not really dislocated. She's just haven't been able to find the employment that she's looking for. So she will be considered an adult because she's, she is 18 or older. She's authorized to work, and she is underemployed, or in this case, I think she's not employed at all. So the point of this scenario, it was to clarify that we won't consider her disability benefits, her military disability benefits for our calculations later when we do the priority of service determination, and that is optional. It depends upon Lisa's personal decision if she wants to use her GI Bill benefits toward her education or not. That we don't have to say, no, Lisa, even though you're eligible for services, I can't pay you any training services because you have to utilize your GI Bill before I can pay for anything. We can't require that. We can mandate for her to use it. It's ultimately her own decision whether she wants to use it or not. But if she said, no, I don't want to use my benefits for that because my benefits is what I have to survive, then in that case, we will pay for her training services.
All right, Rosani, Tiffany Andrews is asking, why wouldn't she be long-term unemployed?
Well, and we can look and see if she would meet one of the 7 categories. And when the idea of, I created the scenario. So the idea was to highlight the GI Bill not being part of our calculation to provide her with training services and the disability benefits, but part of the priority of service calculation for low income. But if she meets one of the 7 categories for dislocated worker, then you will serve her as a dislocated worker, not because she's a veteran, because she's not a transitioning military member, but because she's an adult that fulfills one of the dislocation reasons or reasons for dislocation, if that makes sense. No, you're not difficult. That's why we're doing this training. We want you to ask the questions, and we know these scenarios are not the easiest one because we want you to think through it. That's why we are here. We want you to learn. We want to share information.
Okay, there's a couple of, hold on, y'all are loading up the questions. This is great. Okay, so there's a couple here that are about the husband's salary. Do we consider her husband's salary if she is married? And then the next question, why wouldn't you consider her spouse's income if he is in the household?
Because she receives disability benefits. That means that she is considered an individual. I'm sorry if you hear some background noise, sorry. She has a disability, right? She receiving disability services. Therefore, she'll be considered a family income of 1. And we're looking at her as an adult, right? Going through like our adult program. Now, if let's say that she would be eligible for dislocated worker program, for the dislocated worker program, then income is not an issue because we don't really look at income for DW, right? But if if we, the sense or the true essence of this scenario was that she was an adult, right? Eligible for adult services. So in that regard, she is also disabled because she receives disability benefits. Therefore, she'll be a family income of 1.
Okay, Gina Williams says, if she is receiving VA disability benefits, we count her a family of 1 and will not count her spouse's income. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. In the policy, it states you can use the DD 214 to show they are a dislocated worker because they received a notice of separation. Why wouldn't she still keep her dislocated worker status if she has been job searching but unable to find a job?
Then if she qualifies for DW, then you follow the DW process, right? But if she doesn't qualify for the DW, so there's several documents that you can use to the DD 214 you can use sometimes when they are transitioning, not for Lisa, but just for a transition service member. They don't have the DD 214 just yet, but what we want to tell you today is that there's other documents that you can use. And that week with those attachments, will tell you all of the documents. But if they have the DD 214, then you can use the DD 214.
This is a good example of of a participant that could potentially fall into both adult and dislocated worker eligibility. Obviously, the example Rosani's put together for this one, we were trying to hit on, the tricky bits about the GI Bill and disability benefits. But these are all great questions, and I think y'all are thinking about it in the right way. This is just one that could kind of fall between either eligibility category. And again, we would just advise use what's easiest for you to determine eligibility and roll with that.
And as Brittany is saying politely, it will be easier to categorize this person as a DW, right? Probably to provide services because you don't have to establish priority of service. You use what's easiest.
Aviana Jackson is asking, when are transitioning vets no longer eligible as a transitioning vet?
Well, when they're vets, that means that they are already out. They transition out, right? So that they're not in that process of transitioning. When they are transitioning military service member, then they are in that process in which they are getting ready to leave. Therefore, they're transitioning into, and they need to get training and all of that for when they finally transition and become a veteran, right? The veteran designation comes after they have completed that phase of transition. That's, I guess, the easiest way to explain it.
Aviana, did you want to clarify on that? Your question?
Oh, yeah, I'm referring to service members. We just call them vets down here, but
Oh,
Yeah. So military service
the-
members.
yeah, I was just asking, so is it the moment they get discharged, they're no longer considered a transitioning service member?
Once
And then
they
we
are,
have to move them to the adult program? Is that what we're going?
yes. Once they are officially, yes. Once they are officially out, they're no longer considered an employee of whatever branch. They're not considered active.
all right. And Christy Freeman is asking, would Lisa have been eligible for retirement benefits? And would that make her over income potentially?
I love it. You guys are taking the scenario and really processing it, right? To be honest, Christy, I didn't, I stopped with Lisa with the specific characteristics or details that we gave you. If you are working with Lisa as an adult, right? Then you will consider whatever income is allowable for you to consider for her, family of 1 determination that you need to make. So I hope that will clarify the the question.
Okay, it does. Chrissy says it does. Thank
Excellent.
you. Okay, I have a question that says, can you explain what is long-term unemployed?
Yes. There's a particular number of weeks that makes someone long-term unemployed. That's dictated by USDOL. And they no longer have to be consecutive, but I don't want to say the wrong number from the top of my head.
I've got the
Preeti,
policy manual up if you'd like me to take that one.
yes, I don't know if they're 27 or 29 weeks, so I might be totally off.
Yeah, so for long-term unemployed under WIOA Title I is 27 weeks or more consecutive weeks of unemployment. Ashley, I see Ashley Simmons posted in the chat 12 out of the last 15 weeks. However, I would caution you all that more open long-term unemployed definition is only for the DWG grant. For regular folks that we're serving under WIOA Title I, long-term unemployed means 27 or more consecutive weeks. So just a caveat there, the grants have a slightly different eligibility category.
All right, question from Susan Purdue. Is the only instance that we don't count spouse's income is when it's a veteran receiving disability income? What if the person is not a veteran, just a person receiving Social Security disability? Do we count the spouse's income?
That is a great question. So whether you are going to consider the person a family of one or not has to do with the person's personal status of having a disability. If the person has a disability, whether it is a out-of-school youth, an adult, right? If they have a disability, well, with out-of-school youth, they will be considered low income, but with the adults, they will be considered family of one. So it's not whether they're military or not, it's the fact that a person who has a disability per WIOA regulations are considered a family of one. And if you receive SSDI, then we will only count that your SSDI or the SSDI amount that the person received, because SSDI counts toward income because it's the disability insurance that the person is collecting due to that disability that they acquired, right? It's different from SSI, which is considered public assistance and will make someone low income by as a public assistance recipient. But for those that receive SSDI, we will count the amount of SSDI that they receive, but we will only count that because of the disability status. I know this is complex and confusing. Hopefully that it's clear.
All right, and keep in mind that we will take all of these questions and put it into a document with the answers, and you'll receive a link to that as well. All right, another question, Diane Jackson. I thought you first had to check household income first, then if they are over, you can only use the family of one.
So for disability, because by statute, they will be considered family of one, you don't have to you don't have to worry about checking the household income. Just know that with someone that has a disability, just focus on that person's allowable income that you have to make your calculations with. So you don't have to check the family income at all if they have a disability.
Okay, Akeisha Burton has a question. What if during eligibility, a customer's situations change? How do we proceed? Example, if they were jobless or over income or homeless, do we have them to reapply within a certain time frame?
So if you are serving someone and they were homeless and they're no longer homeless, is that the?
It says, what if during eligibility, a customer's situations change? How do we proceed? For example, if they were jobless or over income or homeless, do we have them to reapply within a certain time frame?
So, yeah, and this is very good. The only criteria there that you have to consider for eligibility determination, and I'm talking about adults, right now, right? Um, so eligibility has the three basic requirements, right? That both adult and DW share, which is 18 or older. The person is authorized to work and selected services, plus the two additional for adults. So if the person was jobless when the person applies for services and when you are making your eligibility determination, the person has a job, then you have to look at the person has a job, is the person still considered underemployed? And then you look at all the possible criteria or options for underemployment. If the person does not meet the underemployment definition, then unfortunately, at that time you can't serve that person because that person just not doesn't meet basic eligibility for adult services, right? Um, but if the person after having the job is only working part-time or is not making significant, income, the person still meet the low income criteria, or is has a job that is 7.25 an hour, and the previous job he was making $14 an hour, meet one of the criteria for underemployment, then you make that person eligible, right? And then move to the next step, which is determining if the person falls within the priority of service, right? If the person falls within the priority of service, then you serve that person within that priority of service. If the person doesn't fall within the priority of service, then you pull your priority of service order that tells you, what group you will serve first, which is the veterans or eligible spouses within the, three categories, three priority groups, and if not the second one, and if not the third one, and you see in what order you can serve that person.
Adrienne Williams asked, what is the maximum income amount for a household of one?
To be considered low income, Adrian, or
Yes, Rosani, for low income.
okay. I don't know the number from from the top of my head, but we will look for that number. Can someone help me out?
You got a couple of responses here saying 6,795.
That's 6 months, right? Because I think it's 12,000 and some change. But I don't have the specific number. I have
Okay, here's a TCSG policy 3.2.5, page 103, under the low income individual states you have to verify household income first. Has that changed?
well, what we're saying with that, we're going back to the disability question. Is that by statute, if they have a disability, they're just automatically considered a family of one. So this policy is talking about people in general that are not individuals who are disabled. So when you are the statute, the policy 3.2.5 hasn't changed, but there's a caveat there or a note there that if the person has a disability, then you don't have to worry about family income because by statute they are considered family of one. Can maybe Deneen or Brittany help me to get the amount for low income
Sure,
for family of one?
yeah, let me pull up the web.
Thank you.
In the meantime, Quentin Daniel is asking, so are these low income numbers not being updated with inflation?
We don't have the authority to change the low income numbers. This is something that we get from the federal government, but they are updated every year. Someone put in the chat 13,590. The last time that I checked this number, it was 12,000 and some change. But we're
That should be right.
verifying.
Rosani, sorry, I'll type the WIG name or number in the chat for you all. We'll make sure that it's linked in our Q&A for this as well, but there's the LLSIL WIG that gives that chart on it, and that'll give you the full numbers for like metro area versus Atlanta MSA and, you know, non-metro areas. So we'll make sure that resource is available to you all.
Thank you. So, Adrian, we will refer to that week so you can have the most updated numbers. And we issue these every year. Like the updated chart with the percentages and numbers.
I'll read Quentin's comment. It says it's laughable since groceries are 24% higher than last year. Clients are being turned away because of that.
It is absolutely a great point in a conversation we've had that I think, you know, we all recognize and y'all more clearly than those of us up here at the state level, obviously, since you're dealing with participants, that, you know, a lot of these measures that we are using to look at income and all of that, like Rosani said, is dictated by the feds. And I think we can all recognize that there are no perfect measures to capture that, but that is a great point, Quentin, and I think something we're all seeing.
And that is also a good reason to make sure that we are also screen, and this is very relevant for priority of service, right? The low income status, but that's why it's good for us to have a screening tool for basic skills deficiency as well, right? Because if they don't qualify under low income, they could qualify under basic skills deficiency as well.
So Rosanna, we're coming up on the 4 o'clock mark, but if we want to keep going, we still have 130 people that are logged on and some questions that are coming through. You want to keep going?
We can take a few more questions.
Someone's asking if we can provide the link to the minimum living wage calculator.
Brittany just provided the link to the LLSIL. It's on the chat.
If we want the living wage calculator, that is linked in our policy. I'll add it in the chat here as well.
She posted the week that we issued this year.
And yeah, Dana Brewer posted some information as well. And as I mentioned, so we'll take this list of questions and have responses for you. Let's see, Don Bruce asked, am I understanding correctly that if a person self-attests they are basic skills deficient, we do not have to verify income? They are eligible?
Okay, so yes, good question. Don, let me clarify that. So remember that priority of service comes after eligibility determination. So the person has to meet those basic adult eligibility requirements. The 3 basic one plus the one of the 2 additional ones, right? 18 or older, authorized to work, and a selective service if a male, right? Plus underemployment or unemployed. If the person meets those those eligibility requirements that person is eligible, the next step is to determine priority of service. And if the person is basic skills deficient, then that's sufficient for that individual to meet the priority of service. And that can be validated through a number of ways, self-attestation being one of it. But remember that when you're using self-attestation, you should use that as your last resort. And if you're using it, you need to accompany that with a case note as to why self-attestation was the best option. Hopefully that helped.
All right, I'll read one last question. Quentin said, recently had a client who was on lockout from their job, had been on strike since October. Are there no special provisions to assist clients not receiving income because of a strike scenario?
I'm not aware of anything that would, make them eligible for our services. As I understand it, when someone's on strike, you're still connected to that employer. And so they are still employed, even though I guess I don't know if they would be receiving wages, probably not. So, I mean, unless you could make the case for underemployment, not solely because of the strike, but because of that job in general, then perhaps we could serve them. But no, there's nothing that would resolve that particular situation, Quentin.
Just one last comment from Dawn Bruce. She said she's talking about the basic skills screening tool that they received that the customers complete.
Yes, that will help you to determine basic skills efficiency, and that will satisfy the self-attestation validation.
Okay, well, that concludes our webinar for today. We'll wrap it up. As a reminder, we will be sending out a link to the pre-recorded presentations and the reference materials within a week. And we thank you for participating in today's webinar, and we hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day.